All right, Clemson fans, welcome to another episode of the Orange Crush podcast with David Hood and Grayson Mann of TigerNet. Of course, Clemson is fresh off a 48-31 victory over Virginia in Death Valley. Look, a sun-splashed afternoon. A cool morning gives way to warmer temps in the afternoon. Lots of orange in Death Valley. CJ Spiller goes into the Ring of Honor. Tony Elliot is emotional as he watches there at midfield and the paw. Clemson, once again, kind of a slow start, comes back, takes the lead late. Quarterbacks are in and out of the game. We saw a little bit of everything, Grayson. I put in my story that Clemson doesn't play around Halloween this year. It's a couple of days after, but this was one of those kind of weird contests that if you just look at the final score, you go, man, that was back and forth. It was a shootout. It really wasn't.
Yeah, it was one of those. You mentioned Halloween. There's a lot of tricks and there's a lot of treats within this game, just depending on where you look at it. You got Antonio Williams throwing passes again. The jumbo package made its return. The thing that I have headlined within my notes is messy, but in control. And for Clemson, it was another slow start. It was a little weird out the gate. You had a really promising opening drive, but it's negated by an ineligible man downfield. Klubnik throws a 2023-esque interception, and you're thinking you can sort of feel the nervousness start to creep in within this crowd. It was getting spooky to continue on the Halloween theme. But then they regained control and looked like the Clemson team that we've come to expect. But Sweeney said it's an ugly game, but we're going to go in the open date 6-1, and we gave ourselves a chance. And that's pretty much all you can ask for. And they're going to just look to get healthy in the next couple of weeks.
And before anyone asks, yes, I am out in the peach orchard. I think this is
beautiful,
the best
man.
For a beautiful fall afternoon. I've got TV and kids going in on the inside. So, yes, I'm in the peach orchard having a ball. But, yeah, I have to say this. Brandon Rink of TigerNet said that if we go with Antonio Williams throwing a pass every game from here on out, he would be happy with that because Antonio is now 2 of 2. He's got the one touchdown. This was the Stellato. Almost got Stellato killed because he had to throw it up. Stellato had to come back for it. But, yeah, man, and you had to wonder with Cade and the offense, and you're right, people getting nervous. Holy cow, is the sheet off of the ghost? Here we go. What's going on? Klubnik throws the interception. He's pissed off, comes over to the sideline. And then it was just kind of control after that. Virginia, somebody tweeted at me that Virginia was just running wild over Clemson. It really was 1 3rd and 17 conversion by Calandria where he escapes. That gets them the score. But there was one point there late in the second quarter where Virginia had 97 yards. That's pretty good. And that's why I say if you look at the score and you look at the total yardage, you go, man, this was a shootout. It really wasn't. Clemson was in control kind of early on there in the second quarter. They tied it up at 10, and then it was just kind of this inexorable march to the big lead.
And Virginia had 10 points entering the fourth quarter, and Sweeney sort of joked about it in his post-game press conference about calling off the dogs, per se. And then Virginia goes out and runs some up-tempo, gets 2-point conversion in there, and Sweeney then immediately, I think it's not petty, but it's funny the way they sort of orchestrate that, where immediately you see 2 trot out there and throw a 9 to DJ Moore for a quick one-play touchdown. And that's just sort of the weirdness that it's encapsulated of today. And I'm sure we'll talk about this, Dave, and I'd love to sort of segue to it. I think one of my primary concerns, if I'm a Clemson fan coming out of this game, is defensive depth and sort of the drop-off that comes with if a Strozier goes in. For example, he got caught on a couple long passes today. My primary concern, you sort of saw that with Peter Woods when he was hurt, is that the drop-off at defensive end isn't as strong as Clemson fans may want it to be at this very moment. I think overall, if you get a grade today, maybe B- sort of outing from this squad, a little bit of sloppiness, some penalties. We saw the first fight, technically, of this season between Virginia and Clemson. But I'd love to get sort of your take on it. I put out on Twitter that my primary concern right now would be just the depth of defense because the season's going to continue to roll on. If Clemson wants to get to where they want to be, it's going to be a long season, maybe 16, 17 games. You're going to have to rely on some of these reserves, and I'm not sure they quite can yet.
They cannot. And adding to the weird theme, Yeah, so Virginia has 173 yards through the third quarter. The first play of the fourth quarter, they go for 44. They had 45 yards of offense in the third quarter. They go for 44 on the first play of the fourth quarter, while the fourth quarter video is still playing and the fireworks are going off behind Calandria. And you're like, what in the world is going on here? And then, yeah, funny, as in Dabo with 6:53 left, puts in Vizina, puts in Keith Adams, reserves, some reserve offensive linemen, 3 middle runs, net 6 yards. Dabo's called off the dogs, right? Which is, that strays away from what they've done earlier this year. They put in Vizina and they still run the offense. This was more like, I'm not going to run up the score. And Tony Elliott said, okay, you want to play that game? I'm not going to do it. Now, he does put in Tyler Muskett, who's the backup quarterback, but they do. They run tempo. Bam, here we go. We're going to score another touchdown. We're going to get a 2-point conversion. And Dabo's like, maybe I better put my quarterback back in, especially after Virginia went for the onside kick. Tony's still trying to win this game, right? Or he's still trying to make it, respectable. So Dabo puts in Klubnik. Yes, the 173 yards in the fourth quarter alone is on backups. And, in the past, Clemson fans would complain because they would want the shutout. This was a Brent Venables defense. And you would put in some of the third and fourth string guys and they would give up a late touchdown. Now with the third and fourth string guys, you're wondering, are they going to give up 200 yards and 3 touchdowns? It's just not the same. And, this Clemson defense is going to need some of these guys as we go throughout the season. And the depth is not there. Some of these younger guys, and I'm all about playing them. I'm sure people are going to be mad. They want Clemson to win 48-13 or, 48-17 or whatever it was. I get it. You want it to look more impressive. And they keep talking about the committee and blah, blah, blah. Look, it's a 12-team playoff. If Clemson wants in the playoff, go win the ACC. It's not going to be about how pretty or how much the defense gives up in the fourth quarter. Go win. And so now that sets up, here we go, a November, as Dabo would call it, a November to remember.
It's a gauntlet. 5 games in November. I don't know how many other teams in the FBS play 5 games in November. Maybe it's more than I believe just because it's how the month is structured this calendar year. But just to sort of quickly tab on those thoughts is that it's going to be a November to remember. Sweeney said that the margin of error just gets a little tighter once we get to this month. And heading into the open date, David, and the 5 games that Clemson has to play, I guess you could say 4 because the Citadel is considered a wash in that sense, unless you're South Carolina in 2015. But I digress. You have 4 games, 4 conference games, or 3 conference games in South Carolina. What sort of are you looking for this team to improve? If this is a playoff team, if this is a team that's worthy of claiming the ACC crown once again, for these last 7 games, sort of in the body of work that they've posed, where are you looking to say, I want to see this improved out of the open date with that week off, with that extra week to study tape? Is it the defensive depth? Is it sort of the offensive efficiency at times? What are you looking for from your eyes from this team in November?
Well, this offense is still really good. Second most yards that Virginia has given up this year. They gave up 544 to Wake, 539 to Clemson today. I think the offense is going to be just fine. Cade was jumpy today. He was inconsistent today. He misfired on some things. I think the open date will be good for him. But it really is the defense. The defense can look really good at times, and then they can look really bad at times. And those outside runs are still an absolute problem. And here's the thing. So Louisville, they came into today, I think, ranked 42nd in total defense. They gave up 52 to Miami. There was a fumble call that was controversial. They have to go to Boston College next Friday night. That's never easy. Boston College now on a losing streak. Louisville could be fighting for their lives. And they're good offensively. They are explosive. And if you're Clemson, you've got to tighten things up. You can't be in a 41-39 shootout with them in the fourth quarter. You can't. And, then it doesn't get any easier because you've got that home game. And then you've got to go to an improved Virginia Tech team that's now playing really well in 4-3. And how about undefeated Pitt? Got to go up there where Clemson lost 3 years ago with Eli Holstein, the transfer quarterback from Alabama. He's playing really well. And so, yeah, not easier. And then how about South Carolina? They go in and beat the bejesus out of Brent Venables in Oklahoma today, 35-9. And granted, I don't think South Carolina was great offensively. They're not great offensively, but Oklahoma turned it over. This defense is going to have to get better, and they're going to have to create some depth. We saw a lot of Sammy Brown today, which I think is a good thing. They played a lot of 3 linebacker looks. I like getting Sammy Brown in there. But if this is going to be a November to remember, this defense is going to have to tighten up.
You want to make it a November to remember so you can have some presence in December for that Christmas theme. And I think for this defense, it's a matter of consistency because we've seen it in flashes against this opponents. But I guess I'm raising another question to you, David, about sort of the schedule and sort of the chatter about on that side of things. And now they're not trying to impress a committee because if they win the ACC, they would get an automatic bid. That's just sort of the beauty of the new system. But do you raise any concerns about the level of competition they've played? I think I made maybe a joke or two about the only 2 winning teams that Clemson has played is Virginia and Georgia. And if you had told me that after the game in Atlanta, I would have been a little puzzled because we might have thought that Florida State would have been better. NC State certainly was trending towards competence, and now they're trending towards incompetence. So the way I guess I see it is you can't fix who you play in front of. It's not Clemson's fault that the teams that they've played have sort of collapsed around them. But do you see maybe an issue pose where it's sort of like, hey, that reminds me of that Ohio State team that played Clemson in 2019 in the Fiesta Bowl where they got punched in the mouth a little bit just because they hadn't seen speed and power like that through a weaker ACC in 2019. Do you see a situation where Clemson maybe gets caught off their toes, especially on that 2-game road trip in November, or maybe South Carolina where, hey, this is going to be another layer of tests for this team in November? It certainly is going to be something.
It is going to be something. I think that, it's going to take care of itself. Everybody's going to be who they are by the time November rolls around, and they are going to be tested. And that is a fact. Pitt's going to test them, Virginia Tech, South Carolina, even Louisville is going to test Clemson. I think that takes care of itself. And, I think it's all very interesting that the defense is pretty good. I don't know that pretty good is good enough to win, but how about for the first time in a long time, it's Clemson's offense that's carrying the load. And I think that's fun. And again, as disjointed as Cade was at times today, and the offense, 10 penalties for 97 yards, not good. Still 28 first downs, 500 plus yards of offense, 48 points. It's hard to complain about that because this is a game that a year ago they might have lost, or it would have been a lot closer.
Could you say maybe just in spite of themselves sometimes they're finding ways to, I think it was a question posed to Klubnik, that sometimes you guys are tripping on your own feet and you're still finding ways to put up 40 points. Just how maybe is there another level of this offense that we haven't quite seen get unlocked because the talent maybe sometimes you start to believe your own hype a little bit. You get to read the news clippings, as Dabo likes to put it, or the press clippings, excuse me, just about how great this team is once again. It's an appetizing product, I think, for a lot of fans who have really been waiting for that offensive punch since 2020. So maybe you get into this Virginia game, there's a lot of emotion. Tony Elliot has got his guys ready for sure. And you just get a little punch. But for Clemson, I think, certainly, David, as we move forward, I don't think this is a complete product yet. I still think that they're in the oven right now. They're sitting at maybe a minute left to go before they really warm up, and I'm ready to take a bite into that team. So we'll find out. I think November is really where we're going to learn a lot about this program, and I think that's exciting because we haven't really had to have that conversation yet because that usually means we're talking playoffs, we're talking postseason. We've been talking Gator Bowl and Pop-Tarts Bowl for the last couple of years. So it's certainly an exciting time, I think, to be a Clemson fan again.
And don't forget, Clemson plays Louisville on Saturday. And then that following Tuesday, yes, the entire country will be honed in on an election between Vice President Harris and President Trump. But that's also going to be the first release of the college football playoff rankings. So while everybody else is looking at the election results, you and I'll be glued to the TV to see if Clemson is included in those rankings and exactly where. Then we'll have a talk with the head of the College Football Playoff Committee later that night. That's all to be out there. It's all to be fun. And I'll tell you this, I'll leave you with this. This Clemson offense, as it did get a little bit boring, a lot boring and a lot predictable. over the past couple of years. I love the fact that we have seen that jumbo package, fridge package, whatever you want to call it, with DeMonte Capehart and Peter Woods. We've seen it 2 weeks in a row, and 2 weeks in a row we've seen Antonio Williams throw a pass. Dabo is growing up and kind of letting the dogs loose a little bit. I love it.
And he let the dogs back into this game to put a little bit more zest into this victory against Virginia. Guys, I think that'll do it from us today. It's going to be a fun couple of weeks, as David said. There's a lot happening, not just in Clemson, but in the country. It's going to be certainly fun to see how the football world continues to develop. Guys, this was me, myself, Grayson Mann, alongside my co-host, David Hood, who is currently in the wilderness of college football, as you could say. Guys, thank you. And you can see below on the banners, we want to thank our sponsors, Herb Tyler and Clemson's Chick-fil-A. I got to get myself some Chick-fil-A soon. I'm a little bit deprived of those waffle fries and the Diet Coke. But we also want to thank Lisa Nason and Nason Accounting for their support. Guys, thank you for joining the conversation. Stay safe, travel well if you are making the trip back from wherever you are from Death Valley. Guys, thank you as always. Take care. Have a good one.